Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of the Go Healthy Plus class. I hope everyone's having a good day. Just remember, I do have your mics on mute, so if you get ready to ask a question or to comment, remember you can always unmute your mic. Plus, we have the chat feature available that you can send any of your chats as well. All right. So we will just go ahead and get started. As you can see on this first slide, if you haven't already submitted your tracker, which would be your fourth tracker, please make sure you submit that today. All right. So what we're going to talk about today is first starting off discussing the success that you had from last week's action steps. We're then going to look at the third essential nutrients, so proteins, where then the topic is called picking proteins. We're going to look at the basic information about proteins, also the protein sources, and also picking proteins wisely, all right? And then we'll get to our discussion questions, and then we will introduce next week's action steps and next week's topic, finishing out, giving you a reminder of next week's tracker. All right, so I'm just going to remove my camera so you can focus on the PowerPoint, and then I will come back on when we get to our discussion questions. All right, so last week's action steps. If you do recall, last week we talked about dietary fats. Dietary fats are essential nutrients that we do need in our daily diet, but we need the right types, we need the right quantities, etc. Okay. So the action step was to focus on choosing your fats wisely. And that was swapping in those high quality healthy fats and then swapping out those low quality unhealthy fats. Just as a reminder, your high quality healthy fats would be things like your liquid oils like olive oil, canola oil, also fish, things like salmon, like tuna, like herring, mackerel, etc., etc. Also nuts and seeds, especially if they're unsalted. Things like avocados, 1% fat-free dairy products. Whereas your lower quality unhealthy fats, meaning that they have a high percent of those unhealthy saturated fats, would be things like your high fat meats, your processed meat, for example, like bologna, full fat dairy products, butter, things like that would be your lower quality unhealthy fats. So my question is, since we met last week, what swap-ins, swap-outs did you make with your dietary fats? For example, did you swap in nuts and swapped out potato chips? Maybe you swapped in, a healthy spread instead of stick butter. You swapped in maybe olive oil instead of bacon fat, something like that. Anybody want to comment? Maybe what swap ins, swap outs you did? Again, you can either unmute your mic or you can send a chat. Any takers? Any swap outs? Okay, got a quiet group today. All right, well, if you are typing that chat and it pops up, I will grab it when you come through, okay? Oh, okay. All right, good. So we got a chat from Sabrina. She said, I have said this before, I believe, and I think you have. She's been eating a lot of lentils instead of meats. Yeah, so that's a swap in, swap out. So as far as meats, uh, especially those high fat meats, if you want to go meatless, you can definitely swap it out with things like lentils, things like peas and beans. Yeah, so that's a swap out also to give you a healthier fat, to limit that saturated unhealthy fat. Yeah, good swap in, good swap out. Anyone
Well, this is
else?
Patty. I've already said this before. That's why I didn't say it again. I've changed over to either 1% milk or no fat milk as
Mhm.
opposed to the 2% or whole milk that I was drinking.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Patty. Yeah, and that's a perfect example of a swap in, swap out. So swapping in 1% or skim milk or fat-free milk, and then swapping out the full fat milk, 2%. And you're going to not only reduce or eliminate that harmful saturated fat, but you're also going to be able to lower calories as well. Good. And Sabrina added that she's also been using avocado oil instead of butter. So yeah, swapping in a liquid oil, swapping out a solid fat. A solid fat would be like butter. Yeah, perfect. All right, then. If anything comes through in the chat, I will grab it when it comes up. But moving forward, always think about choosing your dietary fats wisely, just like we talked about, several weeks ago about choosing your carbohydrates wisely. Okay, so let's get to the topic of the day, which is the basic kind of information on proteins. All right. Now, protein, just like your carbohydrates, just like your dietary fats, they are essential for the proper functioning of your body. They do provide you with calories or energy, just like the carbohydrates, just like the dietary fats. They're also necessary for proper growth and development. It helps you or helps your body build and repair cells and body tissue. Proteins are also a major part of skin, hair, nails, muscle, bone, and internal organs, and they're important for body processes such as blood clotting, fluid balance, our immune response, our vision, production of hormones, antibodies, and enzymes. All right. So you see, they're very, very essential for the proper functioning of your body. Now, proteins are found in both animal and plant sources. On the next slide, we're going to show you those sources. Now, all of the proteins, regardless if they come from an animal source, regardless if they come from a plant source, they all provide you the same number of calories per gram. Specifically, 1 gram of a protein gives you 4 calories, but they do vary nutritionally. And we said the same thing on carbohydrates and fats as far as varying nutritionally. That's why it's important to always think about your swap ins, swap outs. And we're going to see that on the second slide about that, okay? So let's look at underpicking proteins. Let's look at the protein sources. Like on the previous slide, it said that you do get protein from both animal sources and plant sources. So let's look at that. Animal sources of proteins would be your meats and your poultry, your seafood, which is your fish and your shellfish, eggs, dairy products such as milk, yogurt, and cheese. Those are all of your animal sources of protein. And with the animal sources of proteins, they can vary on the amount of protein that it has. And a great way to see how much protein each one of these have is you can look at a food label for that. Now, if it's a fresh source, say if you get a fresh fish and it's you get it from the deli and they wrap it up for you. If you want to know the protein content there, you can easily Google it and see how much protein it has in it, uh, you know, per serving. Now you have your plant protein sources as well, and this is kind of considered a vegetarian option for your plants or for your protein sources. These would be your beans, peas, and your lentils. Just like Sabrina said, she did some swap outs instead of meat. She's doing lentils, which when she does that swap out, she's going to reduce that harmful saturated fat, lower, if not eliminate that cholesterol, especially with any plant proteins. They have zero cholesterol, which is great. So beans, peas, and lentils are a great protein source as well. Really good protein source. Another plant protein source would be soy products. Then your nuts and your seeds. Of course, like we talked about last week, nuts and seeds have those healthy fats. They're also a good source of protein. And then lastly, plant protein sources, you do have whole grains and vegetables. They're generally less protein than is found in other plant sources. Now, if you want to see how much protein are in these plant sources, you can look at the nutrition fact label or the food label to see how much protein is in those products, okay? So those are the animal sources of proteins and the plant protein sources, which now talks about how to pick your protein sources wisely. So how to pick your protein sources wisely. And I made this note right below. And this says to reduce or eliminate that unhealthy saturated fat, like we talked about last week, to improve your protein quality, then you would apply what we're going to look at next, okay? So let me repeat that. To reduce or eliminate that unhealthy saturated fat to improve the quality of that protein, let's see what we're talking about with that, okay? The first part is to choose a variety of protein foods. If you go back to our My Plate tips when it relates to proteins, it said vary your proteins, okay, and go lean with protein, if you kind of remember that. So again, it says choose a variety of protein foods such as beans, peas, lentils, eggs, fat-free or low or 1% low-fat dairy products, lean meats and poultry. And I gave you a little side note down below, such as beef tenderloin, sirloin, 93% lean ground beef, pork tenderloin, skinless poultry, and ground chicken turkey breast. Of course, if you look at the word loin, loin always means lean, okay? Also, to add to this, under choosing that variety of protein foods, it also includes your seafood, your soy products, and unsalted nuts and seeds. Another way to help reduce, eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve that protein quality is choose seafood and plant sources of protein such as the beans, peas, and lentils, tofu, other soy products, and the unsalted nuts and seeds in place of some meats and poultry. That's exactly what Sabrina had when she sent the chat, okay? She chose to do lentils in place of meats, okay? Now, another way to reduce, eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve that quality of the protein is to add beans and peas to salads, soups, and side dishes, or you can serve those as a main dish. Okay. Now, another way to reduce or eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve that protein quality is to substitute fat-free or 1% low-fat dairy products. Uh, just like I think it was maybe Patty who mentioned that. And fortified plant-based beverages such as soy, rice, almond for whole and 2% reduced fat dairy products. Now, we'll go back and say, and we mentioned this when we talked about carbohydrates, your plant-based beverages, the soy, rice, and almond, those kind of plant-based milks, make sure those are unsweetened versions. If not, they're going to pump a lot of that unhealthy added sugars in there, okay? And of course, you can see that on the food label. All right, another way to reduce or eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve your protein quality is select fresh meats. poultry, and seafood rather than processed varieties. Examples of that would be like bacon, salami, pepperoni, sausages, hot dogs, and those processed luncheon meats like bologna. Okay. And then another way to reduce or eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve protein quality is to trim or drain fat from meats before or after cooking and remove poultry skin before eating. And I think we had a question last week. Could you cook the chicken, for example, with the skin on? And then remove it to eat it. And yes, this is what it's talking about there. And lastly, to help reduce or eliminate unhealthy saturated fat to improve protein quality is to try baking, broiling, grilling, or steaming. These cooking methods do not add additional fat. Okay. So does anyone have any questions on picking your proteins wisely? Any questions or comments? And again, you can chat or you can unmute your mic. Okay. All right. Well, if any chat comes through, I will grab it when it comes up, which now takes us to your actual discussion questions. And I'm going to pop back on here. My camera will let me. There you go. There's going to be 3 questions here. All right. The first question is, what animal proteins do you include in your diet? What animal proteins? Is it your meats? Is it poultry? Is it, fish, shellfish? Is it dairy products? Any animal proteins that you include in your diet? And I know from, I think it was Patty, she does include milk products. Okay. All right, got some chats coming through here. Okay, Carrie said fish. Mary said lots of chicken.
Yeah, I eat lots of chicken too with no skin.
Yep. Good. Yeah, and I would say for probably most of us, especially if we're not strictly a vegetarian, would eat lots of chicken. Anybody else want to mention any animal proteins you include in your diet? Okay, yeah. Sabrina said she includes shellfish, she includes eggs. Yep. Other things under dairy products, not only the milks, but the cheeses, the yogurts. Of course, definitely be careful with yogurts. There are a lot of yogurt products out there that add sugar. Okay. Well, let's go to the second one. What plant protein sources do you include in your diet? Beans, peas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, whole grains and vegetables do have protein. They don't quite have as much protein as the nuts, seeds, peas, beans, and lentils do, but they have a little bit. Of course, I know, again, Sabrina said lentils, which is a great plant-based protein source.
Do green beans have a lot of protein in them? Or we're talking about like pinto beans and stuff like that?
No, green beans will not. Hold that thought 1 second. Man, this is live right here. I don't know if you can see it, but I think it's kind of shaded, but these are green beans, a can of green beans. And I will tell you, 1 serving of green beans, which is a half a cup, only has 1 gram of protein. That's why I'm saying those kind of vegetables typically don't have much protein in it, but you can get higher amounts of proteins definitely from other beans, especially things like kidney beans, pinto beans, and things like that. But great question. And again, it'll help you, just refer to your food label, and it will tell you how much protein's in there. All right. Sabrina said raw nuts. Yep. Mary said sunflower seeds or almonds to salads. Yeah. Good ways to add protein. Perfect. All right. So this is a question here, and then I'm going to give you some examples. It said, what swaps have you made, which I know I've got some answers already, or you're planning to make to reduce or eliminate that harmful saturated fat in your diet to improve the protein quality? Examples, you're going to swap in ground sirloin and you're going to swap out ground chuck. You're going to swap in seafood, swap out meat. You're going to swap in beans, you're going to swap out meat. So I think Sabrina knew what I was going to say right there. Swap in fat-free milk, swap out whole milk. And again, I think Patty was in my mind as well with that. So, and I know some of y'all have already given examples of that, but anybody else want to chime in of maybe some swap in, swap outs that you think you will go ahead and make? So after we had this class, you say, oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to swap in this good protein source and then swap out this one that has that unhealthy saturated fat. Anybody?
So what about ground turkey versus ground beef?
Yep. Yeah, ground turkey, you'll see if you swap that in as opposed to ground beef. Now you will have to compare. If it's just regular ground beef, yes, it's going to have a lot less of that unhealthy saturated fat in it. The protein content will be similar between the two, but that unhealthy fat will be different. But yeah, it will. You will see a difference. And again, the best way to do that is when you go to the grocery store, pick up a package of your ground beef, pick up a package of the ground turkey, or you can do ground turkey breast, which is actually the best option. And you can compare to see how much harmful saturated fat is and the protein. The protein sources will be pretty similar. They'll be in the 20-something gram option. And you'll probably see a difference in the cholesterol as well. Yeah. Anybody else want to take a stab at this of maybe after hearing this presentation of a swap in, swap out, you're going to try? Okay. All righty then, which now takes us to the week's action steps. And that is focus on choosing your proteins, wisely. So swapping in these healthy protein sources. Again, healthy protein sources mean that harmful saturated fat is very low or non-existent. That's where a food label can help you. And then swap out those unhealthy protein sources to improve that protein quality. Swap in the healthy protein, swap out the unhealthy protein. All right. And hopefully next week you can give me some other good examples of what you did. All right. Okay, and then apply the 5 fundamentals. I know some of you have been doing a targeted approach with the fundamentals. We're kind of at that point now where you should really be getting all of these fundamentals and applying those on a daily basis. And just a reminder, that's using the Guide to Smart Food Choices to help you select the lower calorie foods and beverages within all the 5 food groups. It's drinking at least 64 ounces of water, is consuming at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day, applying those My Plate tips. When you think of grains, proteins, and dairy, making sure you're applying those My Plate tips. And if you are doing meal replacements, one but no more than two a day, and then physical activity, 30 to 60 minutes a day. All right, so still applying those fundamentals. They're very important. So that's the week's action steps. All right. Now, next week's topic is going to be about understanding calories. Calories in, calories out. And then lastly, next Tuesday, like I always do, I will email everybody the next Go Healthy tracker with the deadline to turn it in next Wednesday. Of course, as we do, each week, I did record this, so once it is converted over to a YouTube link, I will email everyone this presentation. And I think I had a question here. What foods are good to raise vitamin D? Well, dairy products are. Um, Dairy products, and let me see. I think I have some information here. Vitamin D. Give me a second. Looking at my book for you. Cue the Jeopardy music, everyone. Vitamin D. So Mary asked, what foods are good to raise vitamin D? Eggs, fish, dairy products, fortified orange juice, plant-based beverages, almond, rice, soy milk, fortified ready-to-eat cereals, mushrooms, and pork in my book. So yeah, good ways you can get vitamin D. And then Sabrina said, you can also try replacing meat with jackfruit. Yep, that's the option as well. Perfect. Well, thank y'all for chiming in today. Any more questions before we go for the day? Any questions before we go for the day? All right. Well, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me over email, or you can call my office, and I will be looking forward to seeing what swap in, swap outs you tried with your protein. Other than that, I will see you all next week. So y'all have a great day. Thank you.